My name is Barry Doyle. I'm here to talk to you about why, as a truck driver, you may have more options than you know as to where you can file a workers' compensation case to maximize the amount of benefits that you get after an on-the-job injury, which lets you take care of your family and helps you provide you with access to quality medical care after you've been hurt at work. Hit like or share to let more people know that we're on and that we're talking about this. It is valuable information for truck drivers in particular. There's certainly got to be somebody in your circle that you know who could benefit from the information I'm about to provide. When you get hurt on the job, you have a right to file a workers' compensation case. Workers' compensation is an area of state law. It varies a bit from state to state as to how it works out. But the framework is generally the same from state to state. There are three basic benefits that they're provided for with workers' compensation in just about every state. The first of these is that there's a temporary disability benefit. Basically, it's a portion of what your average weekly wage is that you get paid while you're not able to work at all. In Illinois, that's called temporary total disability. It's 2/3 of your average weekly wage. The second major benefit that you get is you get your medical expenses paid for. And exactly how that works varies a great deal from state to state. In Illinois, the workers, the employees, have actually a great deal of control over who they see and the decisions they make in terms of the care that they're going to get. It's not true everywhere, and that's part of why the issue of where you file a workers' compensation case is an important one. The last basic benefit that you get is that you get a permanency settlement or a permanency payment for the extent of your permanent injury following a work accident. And basically in Illinois that's called permanent partial disability. It's based on a schedule and it's fairly complex to go through, and we're not going to try and do that today. But basically what happens is the Illinois Workers' Compensation Act sets out a schedule of weeks pay for each part of your body, and then based on the percentage of loss of use of that body part, that's how much you get paid, and the amount of your payment is based on your average weekly wage, a portion of 60% of it. It's fairly complex, and it's something that varies a great deal from state to state. But basically, all of the states, to a greater or lesser extent, are going to have these three basic features in their workers' compensation systems. There's going to be disability payments while you're off work. There's going to be access to medical care, and there's going to be some type of a payment for permanency that's associated with the injury. Now, because the workers' compensation is a state law system, each state is going to vary in terms of the details of how things work. And it can be important for your case or for the case of somebody you know. Just by way of example, some states limit the amount of time that you can get temporary total disability benefits. In other words, how long you can be off work after an accident. Other states vary like how much you actually get. Some put different minimums and maximums. Some of them are calculated differently in terms of whether overtime is included in the computation of what your average weekly wage is and so forth. Causation is another issue in terms of what you have to prove to show that you had a on-the-job injury. Some injuries aren't covered at all. Some states limit the coverage for on-the-job injuries. Some account for pre-existing injuries or pre-existing conditions or prior injuries in a very different way. And all of these things can affect your eligibility to get workers' compensation benefits at all. They can affect the amount of benefits you get as the case goes through. Now, each state will set out which cases can be filed in their workers' compensation system. And lawyers use the term jurisdiction to describe that. And jurisdiction, all it means is what cases can be filed in this particular state. Now, in Illinois, there are three basic ways that jurisdiction is established. The first one is that the accident actually happened or the injury actually happened inside the state of Illinois. And this is probably the most common one that everyone thinks of. The second basis of jurisdiction in Illinois is that Illinois is the principal place of employment. The third one is that the contract for hire was formed within the state of Illinois, even though the injury happened outside the state of Illinois. And that's true also where Illinois is the principal place of employment. Just to give you an example of a case my firm worked on, there was a gentleman who lived in South Dakota. He worked for a company in Peoria that built aviaries, which are giant fancy bird cages for really expensive tropical exotic birds. He was in Indianapolis building one of these aviaries. He went out from the building he was working in out to his truck to get a tool. On the way back in, he slipped and he broke his ankle. He was covered by workers' compensation in Illinois because his company, his principal place of employment, was based in Peoria, even though he lived in South Dakota and got hurt in Indiana. As the Illinois Workers' Compensation Act played out, that was a much better place for his case to be heard than South Dakota or Indiana, for example. Now, the idea of jurisdiction is important for truck drivers because you guys go all over the place. And that's different from what most everybody else does. If you worked at a supermarket, the odds are that if you get hurt on the job, that's going to happen. There in the market where you work at, that's probably the place that you work day in, day out. And that's probably the place you got hired. All three of those bases of jurisdiction are going to be the exact same place, and it's all going to be within the state of Illinois. Now, as a truck driver, you get out and you get on the road and you go all over the country. And if, for example, your home terminal is here in the state of Illinois, even if you get hurt someplace else, you might have a basis for filing a claim within the state of Illinois. If you were hired by a company in Illinois and your home base is considered to be in Illinois, that would be a basis for filing a workers' compensation case in Illinois versus some other state. And the reason that can be really important is because Illinois tends to be a little bit more favorable to employees than a lot of other states. A lot of other states, as they get in the race to be more, I'm using the finger quotes, more business friendly, have done things to limit the amount of benefits that injured workers can get, to restrict their access to quality medical care, to take a lot more control over the whole process of who's providing them care, what they can do and what they can't do. Whereas in Illinois, if you're the injured employee, you have a relatively high degree of control. I mean, it's not absolute, but it's certainly much more favorable to you than is the case elsewhere. So the issue of jurisdiction is an important one for truck drivers because of the nature of your work. You may have a home terminal that's one place. You may have been hired out of someplace else. You may have been hurt in yet another place. After an on-the-job injury, what you need to be able to do is take a look at all of your options. Well, first off, you need to know what all your options are, and I hope I'm making you aware of these. But you need to know what your options are and weigh those out in terms of what are the issues that are coming up in your case. Sometimes, it may just be a simple question of which state can I get the highest amount of benefits in. But in other states, there may be certain types of injuries where the way the law is set up, they set a higher burden of proof or they limit the amount of benefits that you can get. For example, if you had a prior injury or pre-existing condition. These are things that can be, real make or break issues in terms of a workers' compensation case, both in terms of whether you have a viable case at all and as to whether or not you're going to get, enough out of this that you can support your family. It's going to make a difference as to whether or not you're going to get the kind of care that you need to make sure that you make the best recovery you can so that you can get back to working, get back to what you like to do day in, day out with your life. These are things that you need to be aware of. You need to know what your options are, and you need to be able to make an informed decision. One of the questions I'm inevitably going to ask is, well, which state is the best? And I'm going to sound just like a lawyer for a minute and say, well, it all depends. It depends on what the important issues are in your case. Depends on what your options are. You aren't going to have an option to file in any one of the 50 states. At best, you may have a handful of states where you can go ahead and file a workers' compensation claim, and you need to make a decision as to which of these might be the best one for you. Now you know as a truck driver that you may have options, more than one option, as to where you can file a workers' compensation case so that you make good decisions about where to file a case so that you can maximize the amount of benefits that you get to help support your family while you're recovering from an on-the-job injury, and so that you can get the kind of quality access to quality medical care that you really need to get back to what you're doing and really make a full recovery as best you can, both in terms of work and what you love to do day in, day out. I'm a big believer that knowledge is power, and it's important that you know what your options are so that you can make a good, intelligent, informed decision about what your options are and how to go about handling your case so that you can decide what's a good option for you and ultimately what's going to provide you with the best recovery, the best options possible. Thanks for watching. If there's anyone you know who could benefit from this information, feel free to share the video. It's information that I don't think enough truck drivers are aware of. Anyone who's a truck driver, especially guys who are driving long haul, can benefit from this kind of information. I have a website. It's www.rightsofinjuredtruckers.com. There's a book that's available for free download there. You can feel free to download it for yourself or to pass it on to somebody you know who could benefit from this kind of information. You can certainly feel free to call our office. The office number is 312-263-1080. And we're happy to talk to you about what your options are and try to help you make a good decision about what's right for you, right for your family after an on-the-job injury. Thanks for watching. Have a super weekend. Drive safely. Take care. Bye-bye.